It started with a single photograph found in a dusty box, buried deep in the back corner of a storage unit that hadn't been touched in years. No one expected it to matter. Okay, it looked like just another old picture, faded edges, worn colors. Nothing unusual at first glance, but behind those forgotten smiles there was something strange, something out of place. And that's where the unraveling began. The case had been closed for over 2 decades, a missing persons file, one of many filed away and eventually left to gather dust. The family had long given up hope. The town had moved on. But this one, clue hidden for years, sparked questions no one was prepared to ask. Who took that photo? Why was it found here, in a place it never should have been? And more importantly, what did it mean? As investigators revisited the cold case, more buried clues began to surface. Old friends started remembering things they hadn't thought about in years. A neighbor came forward with something she saw the night everything changed, and a retired detective who once led the original investigation suddenly had a reason to speak up. What he had kept to himself all those years was about to turn everything upside down. The more they dug, the stranger it got. Trails that were once dead suddenly led to people who had been hiding in plain sight. And somewhere in the middle of it all was a truth that someone had tried very hard to keep buried. But just when it seemed like the pieces were finally falling into place, something happened that no one saw coming. Something that made them question whether they were uncovering a mystery or stepping into something much darker. 23 years earlier, in a quiet neighborhood just outside Ashbury, 16-year-old Emily Carter vanished without a trace. It was the night of her best friend's birthday party. A night that started with laughter and music, but ended in confusion and unanswered questions. She was last seen walking home alone, just a few blocks away. No signs of struggle, no confirmed witnesses, and no leads that ever held up. For a while, her face was everywhere on telephone poles, in the newspaper, even flashed on the evening news. But as weeks turned to months and months into years, her name slowly disappeared from the headlines. Her family never stopped searching. Her mother, Lisa, kept every flyer, every article, and every voicemail from detectives who promised they were still working on it. Her father, Mark, grew quieter with time, worn down by the weight of hope that kept breaking. They moved once, but Lisa kept a storage unit filled with Emily's belongings. That box with the photo. It had been there the whole time. But no one had ever looked close enough till now. The photo showed Emily smiling, arms around 2 people who were never identified in the original investigation. What's more, the background wasn't familiar to anyone who knew her. Not her school, not her house, somewhere else. That discovery pulled in a new detective, Sarah Jensen, known for chasing hard cases. As she reopened the file, strange things started to surface. The timeline didn't fully match witness accounts. A man who had been questioned back then had changed his name. A house once believed to be irrelevant was suddenly at the center of everything. Each step forward seemed to lead to more questions than answers. And just as Sarah thought she was beginning to understand what happened that night, a second photograph appeared. This one was even more disturbing. The second photograph wasn't just unsettling neat, was wrong. Taken on what looked like the same night, it showed Emily again, but this time her expression was different. Her smile was tense, almost forced, and her eyes weren't looking at the camera. They were looking off to the side, towards someone or something just outside the frame. One of the same unknown people from the first picture was missing from this one, and the remaining figure's face was slightly blurred, almost as if it had been intentionally smudged. Detective Sarah Jensen studied every detail, her mind turning over possibilities. Why were there 2 photos? Who took them? And why had they been hidden all this time? As Sarah dug deeper, She learned about a string of other disappearances from neighboring towns around that same time, girls close to Emily's age, all gone under similarly vague circumstances. Nothing had ever connected them back then. Different police departments, different counties, no clear link. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling there was a pattern, something invisible running underneath everything. Meanwhile, Lisa Carter began receiving anonymous messages. At first, they were just strange one-liners that seemed like random quotes. Then came the note that mentioned Emily by name, with details never released to the public. Lisa brought it to Sarah, her hands trembling. It was clear someone was watching at the same time. A young journalist named Aaron Blake, working for a small local paper, started his own investigation after seeing the photos leaked online. He had grown up in Ashbury and remembered the case. But what he didn't expect was finding his late uncle's name buried in the old police reports listed as a possible witness who'd never been followed up with. That discovery shook him, especially when he realized his uncle had lived just 2 houses away from the path Emily walked home that night. Something was coming together. But nothing made sense just yet. And the closer they all got, the more dangerous things started to feel. Sarah Jensen didn't sleep much anymore. Every thread she pulled on seemed to twist into another, more tangled piece of the puzzle. The deeper she went, the more it felt like someone had gone to great lengths to keep the truth hidden. She started noticing the same car parked near her apartment, following her on long drives, and once outside the station, it was waiting. But when she approached, it sped off into the night. She reported it, but there was no record, no license plate, no way to prove it. Still, it was clear someone didn't want this case reopened. At the same time, Aaron Blake uncovered a series of archived voicemails his uncle had saved on a dusty cassette recorder. Most were normal friends, work, family, but one stood out. It was dated, too. Days after Emily vanished, a voice shaky and low saying, "I think I saw something. I think she needed help." That was all. No name, no follow-up. Aaron took it straight to Sarah, and when they ran the tape through an analyzer, they confirmed it wasn't his uncle's voice. Someone else had left that message. Someone who may have witnessed Emily's last known movements. Meanwhile, Lisa received another note, this one inside her mailbox with no postage. "Stop digging. Let her rest." No one saw who delivered it. No fingerprints. Sarah increased patrols around her house, but the fear was setting in. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching. They were close. Late one evening, Sarah followed a lead to an abandoned property on the edge of town, a place never searched before. It belonged to a man with a criminal record who had disappeared shortly after Emily did. She stepped inside with her flashlight, the air heavy and still. In the back room, under a loose floorboard, she found something that stopped her cold. She radioed for backup, her voice barely steady. What she had just uncovered could finally answer everything or unleash something far worse. Inside the hidden space beneath the floorboard, Sarah found a small metal box wrapped in layers of fabric, stained and brittle with age. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside were objects that didn't belong together: an old bracelet with Emily's initials engraved on it, a torn corner of the second photograph, and a notebook. Most of the pages were blank, except for the last few, filled with rushed handwriting. The entries hinted at someone being watched, followed, and eventually lured somewhere under false trust. One line stood out. She thought he was helping her. He said she'd be safe. But what shook Sarah most wasn't what was written. It was the name signed at the bottom of the final entry. It wasn't the man who owned the house. It was someone else, someone still living in town, someone with influence. Someone she had already interviewed as Sarah tried to process the discovery. She got a call from Aaron. His voice was panicked. "You need to come to my place. Now, I found something big." When she arrived, he showed her a box of photos he'd just received anonymously. At first, they looked like regular community events, school plays, local sports until Sarah noticed something strange. In almost every image, the same man appeared in the background, sometimes smiling, sometimes staring, always nearby. And in one photo from 2002, years after Emily disappeared, there was a girl who looked eerily like her. Different hairstyle, older maybe, but the eyes, they were the same. Sarah's mind raced. Could Emily have survived? Had she been held somewhere? The idea was unthinkable, but now nothing seemed impossible. Someone had gone to incredible lengths to keep these clues buried. And with every new answer, more questions were erupting, each one darker than the last. Sarah and Aaron took the photos to a forensic analyst, who confirmed it based on bone structure, eye alignment, and facial markers. The girl in the 2002 photo was almost certainly Emily Carter. That changed everything. What had once been a presumed abduction and murder was now possibly a long-term captivity. Sarah raced to re-interview everyone connected to Emily's past, especially the man whose name appeared in the hidden notebook. He was a former volunteer at the high school. Well-liked, quiet, now retired. No prior convictions, no red flags. But something about him had always felt too clean when Sarah finally brought him in for questioning. He didn't deny knowing Emily. He just smiled and said, "I always wondered when someone would come looking." That confession opened the door to a private property hidden deep in the woodsland he never reported owning. A team was dispatched, and what they uncovered was beyond chilling. A small underground shelter concealed beneath a garden shed, reinforced and soundproofed. Inside were personal belongings, worn clothing, and a mattress that had clearly been used, medical supplies, books, even old drawings signed by Emily. But Emily wasn't there. The trail led further across state lines, where a woman matching her description had checked into a motel just 3 days earlier under a different name. Security footage showed her face. It was her, alive, older, different, but definitely her. The case now shifted into a search not for a victim, but for a survivor who had stayed hidden, just as it seemed like everything was ending. Sarah received one final message slipped under her office door. A folded piece of paper that read, "You only found what she wanted you to find." There was no signature. And when Sarah looked closer, she realized the handwriting matched Emily's. Asterisk, the note changed everything. For days, Sarah stared at the handwriting, comparing it with the old yearbooks and letters from Emily's childhood. There was no doubt it was her. But what did it mean? Had Emily orchestrated her own disappearance? Was she hiding from something or someone beyond? What the investigation had uncovered, no one knew for sure. But one thing was clear: she had survived, and she had chosen to stay away. In the weeks that followed, the man behind her disappearance was officially charged. More victims came forward, stories that echoed Emily's of manipulation, fear, and control. The discovery of the shelter had broken something wide open. People in town were shocked, forced to look at someone they'd trusted for years in a different light. Lisa Carter, though heartbroken she didn't get to hold her daughter again, found peace in knowing Emily had lived. "That's all I ever wanted to know," she said softly during the press conference. That she made it out. Aaron's article about the case became a national story, sparking conversations about overlooked cold cases, missing persons, and the gaps in rural investigations. His uncle's tape, once forgotten, had helped lead to the truth. And for Sarah, the case left her changed. She'd solved what many believed never would be. But it also reminded her that some answers don't come tied with a neat bow. Sometimes, survival comes with silence. The last reported sighting of Emily was near a bus station 2 states away. She looked calm, alone, and in control. Whatever she had been through, she was moving on in her own way. And maybe that was her justice. The case was closed, but the story would never really end because some mysteries aren't about finding someone, but understanding why they chose not to be found.